Good morning. We're on Daf Yomi Aleph. We are learning Bia Merit Lili Nishmas Yirachai and Nachama Bracha Bas David Mordechai, and we're dealing with the topic of Adam Oser Davar Sheino Shalo. Can a person prohibit an item that he doesn't own? So we saw the opinion of Rav Huna that Adam is Oser Davar Sheino Shalo. A person can prohibit something which is not his own if he does a bit of a maisa, a little bit of an act. So somebody who slaughters one pipe of somebody else's animal for avodah zarah, even though the other person doesn't want it to go for avodah zarah, it becomes an offering to avodah zarah. It becomes prohibited. However, let's start again. Remember, Rav Nachman and Rav Amram and Rav Yitzchak Ami, those three say, Ein Adam Oser Davar Sheino Shalo. A person does not have the ability to prohibit what's not his own, even if he doesn't act on it. The Meisvel challenge we learned yesterday, the Brisa says if a person slaughters a chatas on Shabbos outside of the Beis Hamikdash for avodah zarah, he would have to bring 3 karbanos chatas. And then to try to figure out why it said this particular case, why a chatas, we said it was chatas ha'of, and it was a chatzi kaneh pagum, half of one pipe was already slit, and therefore in one act of adding a little hair worth to that incision, it's both shchutei chutz, as well as takroves avodah zarah, as well as slaughtering what you can't slaughter on a Shabbos. Hadukulu. That's why Dukulu Badi Adali Kaasim. That's why it was all coming at once. But now beginning today's Daf Mim Aleph Mad Aleph Avol Zevach Lo. But if it be an animal, it wouldn't be 3 chatos all at once, because by the time you slaughter one pipe, which is not yet a shchita, but it is a maisa, it already becomes takor v'savodah zarah. Becomes avodah zarah. Once it becomes avodah zarah, it's all dust. So once it's dust, it's not going to be called shchutei chutz. It's not going to be an offering of a carbon outside. So you see that you can prohibit something which isn't yours. If these 3 Amoraim are right, you can't prohibit what's not yours. So then my area chatasof. Why do you have to talk about chatasof? Talk about an animal, because since you can't prohibit it, it doesn't become dust. Talk about an animal, and therefore it would be, once you slaughter both pipes, that you have the 3 prohibitions all at once. The Gemara says, according to them, there's this far that we rejected, according to Rav Huna. Since it's a chatas, which means it's going to give you atonement, these 3 Amoraim hold, since it's going to give you atonement, it is yours. So once it's yours, Adam Oser Oto, a person can prohibit it, certainly right away. And that's why it couldn't be an animal, that's why it had to be a bird. That in the act of extending the incision, it's both shchita, and it is violation of Shabbos, and it is violation of the laws of avodah zarah. Tashma, maybe this will be a proof about this question: does a person have the ability to prohibit what is not his own? We're saying now there's a view that says you cannot prohibit what's not your own, even when you do an action. So Tashma, come near a proof. We learned Shnayim Olzim B'Sakin. Again, our Mishnah: 2 people holding the knife. And they're shochting together. One of them is saying, I'm doing it for the mountain, I'm doing it for the river, I'm doing it for, any of those things that the Mishnah you can't do. The other one is saying, I'm doing it just to make kosher food. The shchita is no good. So you see that even though that guy doesn't own the animal, nevertheless, the fact that he has an intention, l'shem yamim, l'shem harim, or whatever those, l'shem naharos, it creates it ruins it. So you see, Adam Oser Davar Sheino Shalo. Somebody can ruin what's not his own. Maybe there is his own. Maybe here, what are we dealing with? Maybe the guy who has the wrong thought is also a part owner of it. He has a partnership in this animal. So therefore, you don't see a proof that a person can prohibit what he does not own. So again, we're trying to prove this question. Does a person have the ability to prohibit what's not his own if he does a small act? Or do we say a person cannot prohibit, even with a full act, something which he does not own? Tashma, come here, proof from the following. We learned in regards to the concept of hezek she'eino nikar. The definition of damages is damages that are visible. I go into your house and I burn down your field. That's damage. But let's say something abstract happened because of me. Physically, the item looks whole. So that's only damage midrabanan. Rabbinically, they say you have to pay. And therefore, hametami. Let's say you have truma. and I take a dead rodent and drop my dead rodent on your truma. So it looks whole still, but now the truma halachically has to be burned because now it's tamei. So I've ruined it, but it's not visibly ruined. Or I'm a damea. I take your truma and I drop your truma in a mixture. So now I had a barrel of wine, you had a barrel of wine, you could sell for 100. Now that I dropped some truma into your barrel of wine, you can only sell it for 20 because only Kohanim can buy it because it's a mixture of truma with regular wine. Only Kohanim can have it because non-Kohanim are not allowed to have the truma that's in the mixture. Or I'm an asech. I take your wine and by mistake I pour it for avodah zarah. So now it's still wine, but it's now has a prohibition. You can't get any benefit from it because it was used for avodah zarah. So if he does these things b'shogeg, if he did any of these types of damages that are not visible damage, by mistake, since it's only a rabbinic form of damaging that has to pay, Patri doesn't have to pay. B'mezid, if he did it on purpose, Chayiv, he has to pay. So what do you see? Presumably I'm taking somebody else's wine. I'm taking somebody else's truma. So you see, even though it's not mine, at least by doing an act, I can create a prohibition. So I said, no, maybe not. Maybe this is also talking about here as well, where he's not doing it to somebody else's wine, he's doing it to his own wine. He has a partnership in it. He owns a little bit of the wine. Someone else owns most of the wine. Since he has a share, that's why he can create a prohibition, because he's creating a prohibition on what is his, and then it can be extended also to what is not his. But maybe to create a prohibition, it has to be somewhat yours. The truth is, says the Gemara, one second, then we'll get to the question. This issue is kitanai. This issue is not an argument just between Rav Huna and Rav Nachman, Rav Amram, and Rav Yitzchak. It's actually a machlokes tanaim. We learned in a brayso Ovid Kochavim, a Gentile, Shanisach Yeno Shel Yisrael, who pours the wine of a non-Jew for avodah zarah. Shelo b'fnei avodas kochavim, not in front of an idol. Even so, Asro, according to the Tanna Kama, he created a prohibition. The wine is now, you can't get any benefit from it. Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira and Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava, Matir also, Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira and Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava say that the wine is permitted. Mipnei shnei dvarim, for two reasons. Echad, number one, she'menaschin yayin el b'fnei avodas kochavim, because they say it's only wine that's actually poured to an avodah zarah that becomes prohibited. Wine that's poured without an avodah zarah, without a statue there, doesn't become prohibited. And secondly, the Jew can tell the non-Jew, you don't have the power to prohibit my wine and force that prohibition upon me. So here you have the argument. According to the first opinion, someone can prohibit someone else's property, even though with an action. According to the second opinion, someone cannot prohibit someone else's property even with an action. Yeah, question.
Well, I think you answered it, but this is if he has any partnership in that goods there, like let's say
and certainly he can create a prohibition. Everybody would agree because then he's somewhat his.
But if he doesn't have partnership, he's responsible for damages.
Well, if there's no prohibition, there's no damage.
Well, but let's say, yeah, why not?
No, because they didn't create a prohibition. There was no damage. The item is still here.
The item here, but let's say he mixed up something with it, so he cannot sell it in a full price. Okay.
So yeah, that's what we're saying. You would have to pay if he did that. That's not a question of creating a prohibition because that's just a mixture. Then as we said, since it's rabbinic damage, if it was b'mezid, he has to pay. If b'shogeg, he doesn't have to pay.
Okay.
So now, Rav Nachman, Rav Amram, Rav Yitzchak Amri, Rav Nachman, Rav Amram, and Rav Yitzchak, who hold that a person cannot prohibit someone else's property against their will. So they say, Rav Nachman, Rav Amram, Rav Yitzchak say, even according to that brisa, that someone else can, a Gentile can take my wine and pour it for avodah zarah and make it prohibited to me. Hanimili, that's only true, kuti. It should be nachri. Right? That's only true when it's not Jewish. Avo Yisrael, but maybe even those Tanaim agree that when it's a Jew doing it to another Jew, the second Jew does not prohibit it. He's just trying to annoy his other Jew. No one would really want to go mess up another Jew. He just wants to upset him, to ruin his wine, to make it into avodah zarah wine. No, they don't mean that. It just means to mess up the other Jews. Is that really true? Tashma, can you really say that? That people who do things to each other are just trying to upset each other without really to create a prohibition? Well, think about our Mishnah. Two people holding the knife. Presumably they're both Jewish. They're shochting and they're shechting an animal. And one of them says, I'm shechting for the mountain. And the other one, the other one says, no, I'm shechting just to make the food kosher. Shchita so psula. The shchita didn't work. Food's not allowed. You'll tell me that a Jew just wants to mess up another Jew. He's not really trying to create a prohibition. So Rashi says you could give the answer that we said before. You could give the answer we said before, namely that we're talking about a case where the guy owns a share in it. Well, but since we're talking about a non-Jew, so we give a different answer. Okay, I can tell you the Mishnah is talking about a Jew who we know, unfortunately, is a heretic. He's converted to Christianity. He's changed his name. He became a rabbi for the Jews for JC congregation. So that's the type of Jew that we know does mean to mess it up. It's not just l'tzu'urei. Tashma, maybe this should be a proof. The same thing that we quoted before. Hametame, a person who makes somebody else's truma tameh. Hamedameh, a person who mixes somebody else's truma with somebody else's wine. Amenasech, a person who takes somebody else's wine and pours it for idols. Bishogik, if he does it by mistake, since it's non-visible damage. Potter, he's exempt from paying. Bimezid, if he did it on purpose. Chayiv, he has to pay, because rabbinically they make him obligated to pay. So you see that a Jew does mess up things for somebody else. It's not just to annoy him. When he was Menasech, we said it's b'meizid, it's a problem. Why is it a problem? It's just l'tziur k'machav. It's just trying to annoy him. He doesn't even need to serve idols. It shouldn't become avodah zarah in any way. So the answer is no. Here we're talking about a Jew who's a missionary for the wrong team, and that's why that's what we're talking about. Amalei Rav Acha breder Rav Ashi. Rav Acha, the son of Rav, said to Rav Ashi, Hisrubo v'kibul atzva v'kibul avasramai. What would you say about a guy who we warn him? We say, hey, don't pour that wine of Yaakov to Avodah Zarah because there's an aveira of worshiping idols. You deserve skila for worshiping idols. And he says, as we learned in Masechet Sanhedrin, he says, I'm doing it to get skila. Come on, give it to me. And I'm doing it. Amarle, so he said, listen, Hitler Atzma, a guy who says, I'm willing to do it to get killed. Then you know he really means it. And he does mean for Avodah Zarah. There's no greater mummer, there's no greater rebel than a guy like that. Certainly he meant for Avodah Zarah. Then he does create a prohibition. Okay, next Mishnah. Ein shochtin. So now dealing with rabbinic laws again. The last Mishnah dealt with the rabbinic law that if it was slaughtered to a mountain, even though the mountain doesn't become Elohim because Elohim, Al Ha'arim v'lo Ha'arim Elohim. On the mountains you have their gods. Their gods are not the mountains. Nevertheless, in the Rabbanan, it's prohibited because it looks like something slaughtered to Avodah Zarah. So now some more Rabbanan laws. Don't do things that look like Avodah Zarah. You can't slaughter to the river, into the river. You can't slaughter into oceans. You can't slaughter the blood into vessels because it looks like Avodah Zarah. If you slaughter into vessels, people think he's slaughtering to catch the blood and then throw it for Avodah Zarah. But he is allowed to slaughter into a pit of water. Even though we said he can't slaughter into a vessel, if you're on the top of a boat, you're allowed to slaughter because you don't want it to go onto the floor of the boat. So you can slaughter on top of vessels and let it drop from the vessels out into the ocean. You can never slaughter into a hole. Slaughtering into a hole looks like Avodah Zarah. That's the way the Avodah Zarah used to do. They would worship the holes. So that you can't do. Now, if you don't want there to be a mess, as the Gemara will explain, you can make a hole in your house. So that the blood will go into the hole. But don't do that in the market. So that you not strengthen the ways of the Sadducees, the ways of those who worship idols, who make holes and they slaughter into holes. Because if you make a hole in the market, it looks like you're also acting like them and you're part of their misbehavior.
But if it's a water with the hole, it's okay.
No, it's even worse.
I thought it was okay.
You can't
in the
slaughter.
water, no? And the ocean was okay.
Yeah, uga shalmaim. No, the ocean's not okay. The river's not okay. Uga shalmaim. A puddle of water is okay. Puddle of water is okay. You can't slaughter into oceans, into rivers. So why is it you can't slaughter into an ocean? Because it's going to look, people are going to say he's slaughtering to the angel of the oceans. He's slaughtering to the angel of the oceans. It looks like Avodah Zarah. That's what the people who worship the angel of the oceans would slaughter their animals directly into the oceans. So 1 second. Now Baruch's point, the Tochuga Shel Mayim Nami. So if somebody slaughters into a puddle, maybe people are going to say, "Lebavua kashachit." He's slaughtering for his own reflection, because in the puddle he sees himself and he worships himself. So he's slaughtering the animal to himself, to the God that's him, like Paro worshipped himself. Leo Riva Nia Sitini. To me is the Nile I made myself, Paro says. He's worshipping himself. Amarava, we're talking about Bachurim Shana. When the Mishnah says you can slaughter into a puddle, it has to be dirty waters. Because if it's clear waters, then there's a reflection, and people are going to think he's slaughtering for himself. But to dirty waters, that would be okay. Then the Mishnah says, "Ain't shochta leguma." You can't slaughter into a hole at all, and you can make a hole in the house. So the Gemara asks, but you just said ain't shochta leguma klal. You said you can't slaughter into a hole at all. So what do you mean you can make a hole in the house? Abai is like this. Reisha beguma shabashuk. The beginning that says you can't slaughter into a hole is talking about a hole in the market, and you can't slaughter into a hole at all. However, the end is talking about a hole in the house. Rava said Vamidiktani Sefer, but then after it talked about you could make a hole in the house, it then goes again and says again, Uvashuk lo yasakin, but in the market you shouldn't do so. That means at the beginning was not talking about a market. So therefore Rava said like this. Okay, this is what it means. You're never allowed to slaughter directly into a hole. In the market, in the house, you can never slaughter directly into the hole. However, but now, a guy wants to clean his courtyard. What's he going to do? He can't slaughter the blood into the hole. So now he's going to slaughter the blood onto the floor. It's going to be a mess. How's he going to get the blood off of the floor? So what he does like this, he digs a hole. Then he moves a little bit away from that hole, and a little bit away from that hole, that's where he slaughters. So when he slaughters, it's going to flow into the hole. It's not slaughtering into the hole. He's slaughtering out of the hole, but in a place where it's sloping into the hole. The shochet, then he slaughters in that place a little bit away from the hole. The dam shoses v'yored laguma, and the blood dribbles out and comes down into the hole. However, Vashuk in the market, lo yasakein, he's not even allowed to do that. Because that already can look like the ways of the Gentiles and the heretics. And they're going to say he's not doing that because of cleanliness, because as was pointed out here in the Masifta Gemaras, nobody cares about the cleanliness of the street. Nobody is the altruist to clean the street. They're going to say, oh, why is he having holes? It's Avodah Zarah. Tanya Kavasa de Rav, we have a brisa in fact like Rav. If a guy is traveling on a boat, he doesn't have place on the boat to shech, because if he shechs on the boat, he's going to make a mess. So what does he do? So he puts his hands outside of the boat, the shochet, and he slaughters the dam shoses v'yor al dofni snina, and the blood can come down on the walls of the boat and then from there into the ocean. And that's not called slaughtering into the ocean, because that's not slaughtering into the ocean. That's just slaughtering in a way to avoid the boat from getting dirty. That doesn't look like, everybody knows he's doing that just to avoid the boat from getting dirty. They don't think he's worshipping idols. Then the Brisa continues and says you can't slaughter to a hole at all. But if somebody wants to clean his courtyard, what does he do? He makes the place outside of the hole. The shochet in that place, he slaughters. And there's a little slope from that place to the hole. The dam shows his v'yored laguma, and the blood then flows down into the hole. In the market, even that he shouldn't do. Because the verse says, don't go in the ways of the Gentiles. If he did go in the ways of the Gentiles, we need to check, we need to see, maybe he is a heretic like them. What's he doing? That's what we learned back in Masechet Brachos. Someone who goes in the ways of the Gentiles, we need to check him. A guy who says, I can't daven for the Yom because I'm not wearing white. So what's going on? You can wear daven for the Yom if you wear black. There's something crazy. Maybe he's a heretic of some sort. So we have to check. People who do things that look like the ways of the Gentiles, we need to check them. We do not do in our, as the Rishonim explain, our religious practices should not be copied from the Gentiles. A guy goes to some evangelical church and he sees the way they do it. He says, I'm gonna bring that into our shul. We're gonna reimagine our shul the way they do it in the church. We can't. We can't go in the ways of the Gentiles. Okay, but even without the issues of Kisi Adam, just that the Shechita looks like their avoda, their service. Okay, Mem Aleph Amud Beis. Hashochet l'shem ola. A person who slaughters a korban for an ola. So this is again a din drabbanan. A guy has his chulin animal, and when he slaughters it, he says, "I'm slaughtering it as an ola."
He's not in the temple.
He's not in the temple.
Okay.
L'shem zvachim, or he says, "I'm slaughtering it as a shlamim." L'shem asham tali, as an asham tali. An asham tali is the carbon that's brought when you're not sure if you did an aveir or not. Not sure if what you ate was chaylev or shuman. So you bring an asham tali to hold the punishment in abeyance until you can know what you did, and then you might bring a full chatas if you did the wrong thing. L'shem pesach, he's slaughtering his animal as a carbon pesach. L'shem toda, he's slaughtering it as a carbon toda. So then shchita so psula. Again, midrabanan, the shchita is no good because people are going to say during the shchita he made it a shlamim. During the shchita he made it into a toda. And then they're going to think that you can slaughter, and if you can eat it, they're going to think that when you slaughter a carbon outside the Beis Hamikdash, you can eat the things outside because they think this was a carbon. And that's not true. If you slaughter a carbon outside the Beis Hamikdash, you can't get any benefit from it, as we're going to see many times in this Masechta. So therefore, midrabanan, this shchita is possible. This was not a carbon. This was chulin, and he just did the shchita as a shchita's carbon. But nevertheless, since it looks like a carbon, the whole thing becomes possible. However, Rabbi Shimon Machshir, Rabbi Shimon says it is kosher. It's not a carbon. It's not a carbon. Yeah, today it's very late when we could first put on tefillin, only 6:26. But you're invited to join us here, learning the Rabbanan disqualifications of shchita. So if a person has a carbon, not a carbon, he has a regular animal, it's chulin. Yeah. But when he puts the knife to the neck, then he says, this is the shchita of ola, this is the shchita of toda, this is the shchita of shlamim. So since people might think that at that moment he made it into a carbon, even though he didn't, he just said that the shchita was a shchita of a carbon, therefore, according to the Chachamim, it's no good. And Rabbi Shimon says it's still good. All right, so now what we learned 2 Mishnayos ago. Shnai mochzim esakim v'shoktim. Let's say you have two people holding the knife, doing the shchita together. Echel l'shem echel l'kalevi. One says, I'm shechting it as shchita shlamim. The other one says, echel l'shem davar kosher. I'm just shechting to make it kosher. That's right, shchita so psula, the shchita is no good. All right, this is all, good morning. This is all in regards to these karbanos. But ashochem l'shem chatas. Someone takes an animal of chulin and he says, my shchita is a shchita of chatas. L'shem asham, my shchita is a shchita of a regular asham, namely a guy who swore falsely, a shomer swore falsely, then he admitted that he swore falsely about somebody else's money. He has to bring a carbon asham to get an atonement. Asham vada, l'shem, or someone's mal behektish. L'shem b'chor, he says this is the slaughtering of a b'chor. L'shem meiser, this is the slaughtering of meiser behema. L'shem tmura, this is the slaughtering of a tmura carbon. Tmura is when you have a carbon, you try to say this other animal should replace it, and both become holy. Both stay holy. In these cases, shchita so ksher, the shchita is kosher. As Rashi explains, it's kosher. Why? Made the yadi de shekeru. No one's going to think, oh, you can slaughter karbanos outside and eat them. They'll know it's a lie when he says, I'm slaughtering it as bechor. The bechor or meiser made the yadi mikamiach. You know if something's bechor or meiser before you get to the shchita. Once you're shechting, that's not the moment when you can make it bechor or meiser, the name of hashtu kamakadishim, but you can say, now he's making it holy. So therefore everybody knows it's not holy, it's just, okay, he's saying the shchita of kachim, but the animal's not kachim. They're not going to think that you can eat kachim that were slaughtered outside. That cloud is the rule. All those types of sacrifices that could be donated. So if they could be donated, hashochet l'shmo, if somebody's slaughtering for their sake, then asur, then it's prohibited, because we're worried that people are going to think that he's donating it at that moment, and that people are going to think that a carbon slaughtered outside the Beis Hamikdash could still be eaten. So that's why it becomes prohibited. Midrabanan. However, but something which cannot be donated anyway, it's imposed, like a chatas. You can't donate a chatas. So then everybody would know. Either he did the naver and he needed a chatas, or he didn't. He didn't. He was a chulin animal. So certainly when he says he's shechting it as chatas, it's meaningless. When he shechts it for the sake of chatas, it is still kosher. It's a kosher shechita.
But we allowed to eat it?
Yeah, it's a kosher shechita, absolutely.
He mentioned that he's chatat.
Yeah.
But the guy who doesn't own it.
No, he owns it still.
This is the guy owning it now.
No, I know, but the one that doesn't own it,
Okay.
and it does whatever he wants in
Yeah.
it, then he has no right to do it anyhow. So
That's true.
they should ignore it anyhow. He's not the owner. So whatever he says, I'm doing this shech for this, whatever it is, like
Okay,
that.
you like the view of Rav Amram,
It's
but
all
Rav
Haki
Huna-
Balosh talk, So,
you like the view of Rav Amram, but Rav Huna disagreed. Disagreed.
Exactly. Unless the owner tells him yet to say that or not, then that's a different story.
I understand L'Shem Bachar, Meiser, and Tamur because the person's not getting confused, but a Chatas and a Asham Baba, the person could bound. I mean, he could be saying at this moment in time, this is now, it's not predestined already, like a Bachor or a Meiser. Meaning we're not concerned about those things because the person doesn't have the power to change it. Right? It already was a Bachor or wasn't a Bachor, so we're not concerned, so the rabbi is going to prohibit it. But a Chatas or an Asham, the person decides, I made a sin, I have to bring this now.
Maybe, yeah. But apparently he would have said it earlier, wouldn't do it just at the moment of shechita. But you're right? Why couldn't he say now it's a chatas? That's true. I guess the thought is he would have said it earlier that it's a chatas, not now at the shechita. All right, the Mishnah says Hashochet l'shem ola. Now, or asham tali. So the Gemara asks, 1 second, asham tali bar nida v'nidavu, is that something which could be donated? You either maybe did a sin or maybe didn't do the sin. So Rabbi Yochanan said, Amani Rabbi Lazari. Yes, this is the view of Rabbi Lazar. He says every day a person may have done sins. Every day he could say, I'm bringing another asham talui to suspend the sins that I may have done. 1 second, Pesach. Is Pesach something you can donate? Zimna Kvila. It has a set time. Erev Pesach. Amar Voshai answered, Shiny Pesach, you could separate it as a Pesach the whole year. You'll only bring it later. Amar Rabbi Yana said, Lo Shana Lo Tamimim. That's only true about animals that are whole. Aval Bali Muim. But let's say a guy has a blemished animal, and he's slaughtering the blemished animal and saying that he's doing it as a Shlamim, as an Asham Tali, as a Pesach. Maybe everybody knows it's not really that it's going to be a carbon, because you can't offer a blemished animal as a carbon. So then everybody knows that it's chulin. If everyone knows that it's chulin, it would be kosher. Rabbi Yochanan said, no, afilu bali mum nami. Even if he's slaughtering a bal mum as a carbon, it now becomes disqualified rabbinically because sometimes a person has a blemished animal, but he's trying to bring a carbon, he doesn't realize that it has a blemish. That people will think, yeah, if he said shlamim, he's making it a shlamim now, even though it has a blemish. He's not aware of the blemish. All right, the Mishnah says, Hashochet l'shem chatas. So this gets into David's question. Somebody slaughters an animal as a chatas. Rabbi Yochanan said, we're only talking about l'shem mechuyev chatas. A guy doesn't have to bring a chatas. Mechuyev chatas, but if he'd done something which makes him obligated to bring a chatas, as David said, when he's slaughtering an animal, he says, I'm doing it as a chatas, they're going to think that he made it into a chatas right now. So Gemara said, no, but no one's going to think he's going to say that he made it into a chatas. Because then he'd have to say, l'shum chatasi, v'alo kam l'shem chatasi. But he's not saying for the sake of my chatas. The Mishnah said he said for the sake of chatas. That sounds like for a vow of a chatas. Ravo said, okay, say be'omer l'shem chatasi. If he says for the sake of my chatas, then it would be a problem if he really owes a chatas. L'shem t'mura, again, l'shem t'mura is okay. Rabbi Zev said, Lo Shanu, that's only true. If he doesn't have another carbon in his house, then he could make a t'mura of it. But if he has a carbon in his house, and he says about this animal of chulin, I'm slaughtering it as a t'mura, why don't we say, people are going to say he's doing a t'mura right now. And you see that even though it's holy as t'mura, it could be slaughtered outside and still eaten. People are going to think that shkutei chutz could be eaten. So Gemara said, what do you mean? Why would anyone think that it's a t'mura? He doesn't say as an exchange for my carbon. Ravo said the law of Rabbi Zev was when he says I have a carbon, it's in exchange for my carbon. Then the Mishnah says a rule, Zaklal, if at the moment of Shechita he's saying for the sake of something which could be donated, we think he's donating it, people are going to think he's donating it right then, and people are going to think that you could eat a sacrifice that was slaughtered outside, and therefore the Shechita becomes no good. Lasuye mai, what's that to include? You say this is the rule. Lasuye olas nazir, to include a guy who's a nazir, and he says, for the sake of olas nazir. Ma'alatem, I would have thought to say hello nadar, but he has not made the vow of Nazirus. So he's not a Nazir. A man is not a Nazir, but he just said this for the sake of an Ola of a Nazir. So I would think, but he didn't make a vow of Nazirus. Everybody knows that therefore it's nothing, it's just Chullin. The answer is no. Amar, people are going to think, another bit sinner. Maybe he made the vow, but he did it in private. It takes 30 days. And think, okay, so he has 30 days hair growth. And they're going to think he is a Nazir. Then the Mishnah says, that which is not normally donated, but if he says I'm slaughtering for the sake of those things, it's not a problem. Lastly, why? What's that to include? Olas yoledes, an ola brought by a woman who gave birth. Amr Belezer said, Lo shanu elo she'ein lo isha. If a guy says, I'm slaughtering this animal of Chullin as olas yoledes, it's fine if he doesn't have a wife. Aval yesh lo isha, but if he has a wife, em l'shmahu osa, maybe he's doing it for her. So Gemara says, I lo kam l'shem olas ishti, but it says l'shem olas yoledes. He doesn't say I'm doing it for the sake of the ola of my wife. If he says I'm doing it for the sake of the ola of my wife, Shita, this is all obvious. So Gemara says, now the Tim would have to say, if he had a wife who had actually given birth, we would have all heard about it. There would have been a reputation about it. So that's the chiddush. Maybe nobody heard about it because people are going to say to themselves, Apuli Apil, we didn't hear that his wife gave birth because his wife had a miscarriage. So that's what we didn't hear. You were embarrassed to talk about it, but really she did give birth. And therefore, maybe it is an olas yoledes. And if we're going to allow people to eat it, they're going to think that shchutei chutz, a carbon that's slaughtered outside, could be eaten. So that's why, in such a case, we would not allow it. Either abanan, it's not allowed. So again, the key rule is that when you have an animal of Chullin, an animal that's not holy, and it's being slaughtered as holy, so then we might be worried that he's making it holy. People will think he was making it holy at the moment of slaughtering, and they're going to think that something which is holy, which is slaughtered outside, could still be eaten. So then rabbinically, we do not allow it to be eaten outside. Okay, again, the earliest time for the bracha on talis and tefillin is 6:26.